Welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled you're here with us today. We're going to dive right into a belief that honestly almost all of us have held on to since childhood. Remember that little porcelain piggy bank? Yeah. We were taught from day one that dropping coins in there, avoiding spending, and just saving our pennies was the ultimate secret to financial security. But actually, scratch that. What if that deeply ingrained childhood belief is literally holding you back? Today, we're exploring a totally fascinating concept called the wealth paradox, and we're going to unpack exactly why that piggy bank approach is simply not enough to build true wealth.
Okay, let's dive into this. Is saving money actually keeping you broke? I know, it sounds completely backwards, right? For our whole lives, we've equated the act of saving with the act of building wealth. Now, don't get me wrong, having an emergency fund is absolutely crucial, and our source material totally emphasizes that. But the modern financial reality, it's kind of different. The core problem we're looking at today is that simply saving your cash and letting it just sit there in an account, well, it just doesn't cut it anymore in the modern world.
So this brings us to Section 1, the great savings myth and why hoarding fails.
It's a huge source of cognitive dissonance for so many of us. We do exactly what our parents and teachers told us to do. We work hard, we stick to a budget, and we put a chunk of our paycheck away to build that security. Yet, despite doing everything right, so many folks still really struggle financially later in life. Let's look at the static math here to see exactly why this happens. $12,000. If you take $100 every single month and just tuck it away in a drawer for 10 straight years without investing it, 12 grand is exactly what you get. You disciplined yourself for a whole decade. But here's the catch. Static math is a massive trap, simply because the economic world around that $12,000 isn't static at all. See, inflation is like this invisible thief. In our modern economy, it's silently, constantly eroding that $12,000. While your money is just sitting perfectly still, the cost of stuff like houses, healthcare, gas, groceries, it's all compounding against you, literally bleeding your purchasing power dry. So that money sitting in the drawer, it's going to buy you way less tomorrow than it does today. Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds. The silent wealth killer. Cash is not neutral. Here's the harsh truth. If your cash isn't growing, it's actively losing value. Think about it. Compare the tiny, fractional yield of a traditional savings account to a historical inflation rate of, say, 3 or 4%. Sure, your banking app gives you this cozy little illusion of progress as the balance ticks up a few cents, but your actual buying power, it is mathematically guaranteed to shrink. The perceived safety of a bank is, in reality, a subtle but absolutely guaranteed risk of losing your buying power over time.
So, how do we fix this? Let's look at Section 3, Leverage and Compounding, Breaking the Ceiling.
The big limitation with just saving is that your income has a hard ceiling. You can only physically work so many hours in a week, right? And you can only save a certain percentage of your paycheck. But investing breaks that ceiling through compounding. And this brilliantly illustrates the concept. Compounding is when your money earns returns, and then those returns start earning even more returns. It's not just about earning a few bucks, it's about the mathematical velocity of time in the market. Those returns generate their own returns, creating this massive exponential snowball effect that operates completely independently of your labor. It is, without a doubt, the ultimate tool of leverage.
Moving on to Section 4, the asset mindset, acquiring true wealth.
To really make this work, it requires a total shift in how we think about money. The traditional habit, which is super common among poor and middle-class folks, is trading your time and labor for a paycheck, and then, just trying to save whatever is left over at the end of the month. But the wealthy habit, they do things completely differently. They deploy their capital like a dedicated team of employees, working around the clock to earn them even more money.
So what exactly are these wealth-building employees? Well, we're talking about true ownership here. Things like stocks, ETFs, index funds, businesses, and real estate. These are productive assets. Once a liquid emergency baseline is met, remember, we still need that safety net, smart investors aggressively funnel their surplus cash into these vehicles. Why? To capture that exponential growth we talked about, which vastly outpaces inflation. Let's turn to Section 5, Overcoming Financial Fear. Reframing risk. Now, you might be thinking, hold on, isn't the stock market super risky? Like, what if there's a huge crash? And hey, it is completely natural to have those objections. But as our sources clearly point out, keeping all your money in cash for decades also carries risk because inflation slowly destroys its value. We really have to completely reframe how we look at risk. We often think of investing as this big, scary leap into the unknown. But the truth is, the absolute biggest financial risk you can take is often not taking any risk at all.
Smart investors understand that long-term investing, combined with proper diversification and a whole lot of patience, actually reduces your overall risk while building real wealth.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that fear isn't the only roadblock. Human behavior is right there with it. Enter the lifestyle inflation trap. As our salaries grow, well, suddenly so do the cars, the fancy vacations, and all those luxury purchases. It's like a hedonic treadmill that keeps you perpetually dependent on your next paycheck, rather than using that extra surplus to, actually buy your freedom. Always remember, financial freedom doesn't come from spending more money. It comes from acquiring assets.
Section 6. A tale of two futures. Savers versus investors.
Just imagine a 20-year horizon for a second. We've got Person A. Now, Person A saves every single extra dollar super responsibly, but they never invest a dime. Decades later, they are still completely tethered to their paycheck just to survive. Then there's Person B. They save for emergencies, sure, but they consistently invest the rest of their surplus. Over those exact same 20 years, compounding does the heavy lifting for Person B, resulting in real passive income and actual autonomy. So the crucial point is, this perfectly crystallizes the massive difference between the mindset of saving merely for security and the mindset of investing for true freedom.
Which brings us to our final pivotal question for you. Will your money sit still, or will you put it to work? Saving money is important, absolutely. But as we've seen today, saving alone is just not going to build real wealth in the modern world. Your goal shouldn't just be to protect your money, but to multiply it. Because true wealth isn't built by letting your cash sit still in a piggy bank, it's built by putting it to work consistently over time. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this gave you a powerful new perspective. Keep learning, keep questioning, and go start putting that money to work.